Every once in a while here on the RR Show, it's fun to get a little creepy. So I'm Vince, and on today's episode with Andy, I'll be with you on Friday, we're going to be going into the depths of r/LetsNotMeet. User Small Town Throwaway. I love the stories that are posted from throwaway accounts. The story title, Independence Day Discovery.
I live in a small rural community in the eastern US. It's a nice little town. Because of my work in the medical field, I've met some interesting folks. I'm familiar with law enforcement and emergency personnel. Small town life is not as dull and uneventful as people think, especially since everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. I have a lot of stories to share, but since this one just happened, I'll start here. Because it's still very recent and the investigation's ongoing, I have to be vague with some of the details. But hey, I needed to tell someone. I'm single, and I live alone. Due to a stalker, I moved twice, but that's another story for another time. However, it is relevant to this story for multiple reasons. The first being that I have a dog for the sake of protection, as well as motion sensors and outdoor security cameras. The second reason being the location of my home, which is literally down the street from the fire department. I can see it from my living room window and a couple of blocks from the police station. However, next to the fire department is the road department, which is basically a parking lot where they park their road equipment and empty garbage trucks at night and on weekends. Oddly, it doesn't have a security camera. Small town life, I suppose. My house sits on a hill with a good view of that side of the street. Due to the incline, the large trees in the front yard and the half cornfield on the property next to me, most people on the street below wouldn't notice me in the backyard unless they were actively looking. However, I can see the street clearly. This incident happened Saturday evening. The county was holding its annual Independence Day spiel with a community barbecue, music, fireworks, etc. I did not attend because it's just not my thing. Plus, I have a dog and the sound of fireworks could be traumatizing. Before the big show, I took the dog out to relieve herself in the backyard. There was still at least an hour of daylight, but the entire neighborhood was pretty quiet because most everyone was at the fairgrounds or various other holiday events. So when an unfamiliar large white pickup drove slowly down the street, I noticed. It must have turned around at the end of the street because I saw it again moving in the opposite direction only about 20 seconds later. This time, it turned into the parking lot of the road department. Now, people have been known to toss things into empty garbage trucks, usually at night to avoid getting caught, because they don't want to or are unable to make the trip to the landfill themselves. Now, usually it's things like furniture or broken equipment, but I didn't see any of those things in the back of his truck. The driver was a somewhat stocky guy of average height. He took 3 large black trash bags from the bed of his truck and tossed them one by one into the hopper of the garbage truck. Then he left. Now, I swear I'm not one of those meddling rear window types who always thinks activity is suspicious and that their neighbors are up to no good. But something about this didn't sit right with me. Normally when I see people tossing their garbage into the trucks and leaving, I don't bother reporting it because it's relatively harmless. But this time, I just had a gut feeling. So I called the police. If anything, they could get the guy for illegally dumping trash from a barbecue or whatever. While I'm on the phone with dispatch, I put my dog inside to cut down on the distractions while the officers investigate. A few minutes later, an officer arrived and I crossed the street to meet him. Gave him a description of events and pointed out which of the trucks the man had tossed the bags into. He found the bags, he took photos. He put on gloves and told me to stay back. The bags were tied in a knot at the top, and it took him a minute to untie one because of the gloves and how tight the knot was, but eventually he got it open. He looked inside for a few seconds, then twisted it closed, and took a few steps back. "Shit," he hissed under his breath. "What?" I asked. "It's a body." I felt sick. I could tell he felt sick too. I saw him grow pale. His hand was trembling when he held the radio. Even his voice was shaking as he gave the code to dispatch. The dispatcher sounded confused when she asked him to repeat it. Within 10 minutes, the county sheriff was on the scene. Even he looked sick at the contents of the bag. The coroner arrived about 10 minutes after that, and the first officer walked me back to the house along with another, who arrived at the same time as the coroner. Though I showed the first cop via the app on my phone when I described the events initially, I now showed them the video on a larger screen. The camera caught footage of the truck as it drove by both times, as well as pulling into the parking lot, though unfortunately not a clear view of the license plate or the man tossing bags out of frame. We watched the footage over and over, pausing frames, the officers taking notes. Ultimately, they requested this footage as well as a copy of the files from the past week to see if the truck had been in the area before. I've also been saving footage until the road department installs their own cameras this week. Because this is still fresh, I don't know many more details. I know the body was in pieces, but I don't know the age of the victim, the gender, the cause of death, or any of that. Information hasn't been released to the public. I don't know if the coroner has been able to identify the body yet. A police cruiser has been parked at the fire department next door for constant surveillance in case the guy comes back. The guy who dumped the body was likely local. How else could he know he could dump it there? He probably thought it'd get buried in all the other people's illegal trash accumulated over the holiday weekend, and the sanitation crew wouldn't have bothered to investigate. When I think about how this guy lives in my community, it makes me feel physically ill. To think that he had clearly scouted the area for his dump site. That it may not have been the first time this had happened, and this could happen again. If I hadn't called it in, if I hadn't been in the backyard at that exact moment, or if I had ignored that gut feeling, the victim would never have been found, may never find potential justice. Their loved ones may never have found closure. In fact, there's a possibility that it just might happen again to another poor soul. I hope it's not me. Dear God, please don't let it be me. I think it's time I moved again. Third time's a charm, right? Update. Temporary housing acquired. Moving out. Our next story is from... it's from Anonymous. Someone tried to break into my home while I was asleep. This happened a few years ago now, so I live alone with my 2 cats. We live in a flat, but the front door is on street level. So when you open the door, you go up the stairs and you're already inside the flat. I don't have a garden either. Now, I'm in my mid-30s, female, very small, petite, and lucky enough to still look young. I still get ID'd for cigarettes and alcohol. I also smoke outside by the front door as I don't like smoking inside. Yep, even when it's raining. I don't live in a rough part of town, so it's fairly usual to say hello to people walking by. They're used to seeing me smoking outside, so we often exchange greetings. People regularly use this area as a shortcut. My last cigarette is around 11:30 before I go to bed. Of course, when it's really dark, it can feel unnerving, but as I said, it's a nice area. With all that said, my flat is the only one of 2 in this area. It's not the best looking. The rest are houses. Beautiful houses, pretty decoration, nice cars, pretty flowers, etc. Basically richer and a lot nicer than mine. I'm pretty poor, and you can tell. A few weeks before this incident, I kept hearing my front door handle moving, as though someone was trying to open it. I put it down to kids walking to school. Then it'd be the middle of the day. Then the evening. But each time I got to the bottom of the stairs, no one was around. This one night, I went for my last cigarette, 11:30. Got ready and went to bed. Fell asleep quickly. At one point, I woke up slightly because I heard the cats playing. I rolled over and went back to sleep. They woke me up again. I could still hear them playing, but I also heard them growling. Whilst they were laying next to me in bed, I sat bolt upright and realized the sounds were coming from the front door. The cats were still growling. I snuck into the hall and peered down the stairs. I could see the front door handle turning. For the first time in my life, my brain thought faster than my mouth, and I switched the stairs light on. There was a pause, with my door open a few inches. Then I heard feet running away. I ran down the stairs and slammed the door shut again, then back up the stairs to call the police. This was around 1 a.m. They finally came out at 5 a.m. I didn't sleep. I sat in a chair watching the stairs all night, absolutely terrified whoever it was would come back. I didn't even go for a cigarette, even though I desperately wanted one, because I was too afraid that they'd be waiting. The police showed me how they'd got in. They damaged the door frame and, I don't know what it's called, that bit of material or plastic that seals along the door. That was all cut and ripped up. I called my landlord first thing in the morning and had deadbolts fitted. I'm now overly cautious when I smoke. I don't stay in one place anymore. I go for a little walk each time. I also don't stick to the same timings either. And I definitely listen to the cats better. If they're growling, there is a reason for it. I'm so glad they growled that night. If they hadn't, I'd ignored it and gone back to sleep again. Then I would have woken up with someone in my home doing who knows what, for who knows why. So, stranger trying to break into my house while I was sleeping, please, let's not meet again. I'm sure it's just someone that really cares about your health that wants to dissuade you from smoking. That's obviously what it has to be. Our next story is from Living Perspective 86. A car with no door handles. Context. I was 26 and I'm a lady. I needed gas and it was around 11 p.m. on a Saturday. I pulled into a busy gas station to fill my tank, except it was completely bare, not a car in sight. I also live in Alaska, and it was very cold this night, maybe like -10. Tired after work, just wanting to get home, usually I start my pump and sit in my car due to the freezing cold. But this time I had a weird feeling that I needed to stand by the pump, so I did. I just started pumping my gas when a little golden sedan pulled up right next to me. A guy got out and I was feeling hyper vigilant for some reason. He started cleaning his completely clean windows. As he put back the squeegee, he started towards me. I felt like I wanted to run but stayed calm and continued pumping. He asked me if I would help him put windshield wiper fluid in his car because he ran out and doesn't know how to open the hood. I laughed it off and told him I don't know either, which was a lie. He kept getting closer and closer to me, while trying to lure me into his car by saying there's something under his seat he can't reach because he's too big. Now I'm 5'2" and petite. This man was large and scruffy, think Alaska wilderness dude. At this point, I'm freaking out and hit the call button on the pump. He took a step back and started to go back to his car. I thought I was being smart. My gas is almost done. I looked in his car when I noticed the inside of the doors had no handles except for the driver's door. Now that freaked me out. I was putting the pump back and opening my door. He was right behind me, slammed my door shut and yelled, "You're coming with me." Obviously, I refused and I was petrified. He grabbed my arm and slammed me against my car. I elbowed him as hard as I could. I started to scream at the top of my lungs. Thank God the gas attendant had a big-ass gun that night, because if not, I don't know what would have happened. The attendant pulled the video and we made a police report. I called immediately after the guy took off. Never heard anything else about it. I just hope he didn't get some other girl alone. So, to the guy with no door handles, let's not meet. Our next one is from Adformer8265. Behind you. I'm gonna tell you a story that happened when I was 17. This story still freaks me out so much, and I don't even know what happened that day. I'd like to have your opinion on it. It was in November and my friend Jacob was going to have his birthday for these 17 years. Me, being a good friend, I proposed to him to sleep at my house and then go for a walk the next day with friends in the forest. He accepted. Everything goes well. He sleeps at my place and the next day we leave with friends for 2 hours of road. For the forest is a bit far away and at the time I lived in the city centre. After the road, I realise I forgot the keys to my house at home and that therefore the door to my house was not locked. But hey, I tell myself, we're in a small town, there's few people that frequent the suburbs. The day's going well, and it's time to go home. I was stressed about knowing if my house had been robbed. Then, in the end, I said to myself that there was very little chance of that happening. My friend Jacob wanted to spend more time with me before he left for studies, and so did I. So I accepted that he still sleeps with me. We walk in, and I see that my house is intact, but it was nice and wide open. So I walked around the house and noticed something. The cellar door, which I never open, was open, and there was white paper on the floor. I quickly realized that we had to call the police and check if there was anyone there to reassure us. Me and Jacob decided to shout that if the stranger didn't come out, the police would take care of it. I was paralyzed with fear, and I feared that the stranger was coming. Bad news. The stranger, who was in the cellar, cried, "You're not home! Get out where I lock you up!" Jacob got scared and asked me to come and see if the police were there. Luckily, she was there and took him away in a car. The police found kitchen knives, an axe, iron chains and a board. There was also a white sheet on which was written, "Behind you." I didn't understand from the beginning. The police told me later that the individual ran away from an asylum. Today, I'm 25. And now, I always check if I have the keys on me or not.
So thanks for being with us. The RR Show is a production of Evergreen Podcasts and Wessler Media. Now, if you'd be so kind, please follow or subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling extra nice, you might as well leave a 5-star review. But for more, visit the website, rrshow.com. That is rrshow.com. I'm your host, Vince. Thank you to my producer, Kevin, and we'll see you next time here on The RR Show.